What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Haunted Beard. My name is Jake. Well, today's video, I finally got a chance to sit down and watch one of the movies on my list for this year that I have been looking forward to watching, and that is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies from A24. And I would say I'm typically a fan of A24 movies. They're usually at least doing something, I think, creative and different. And so here we go. Let's talk about it. When a group of rich 20-somethings plan a hurricane party at a remote family mansion, a party game turns deadly in this fresh and funny look at backstabbing, fake friends, and one party gone very, very wrong. And I'll just say right from the get-go, overall, I had a pretty good time with Bodies, 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 and I would recommend checking it out. So first off, I want to talk about the characters, because one of the things that I think you kind of run the risk of with this type of movie is, so obviously there's an element of humor here. This is a satire on kind of the Gen Z stereotypes and things like that. And I think you kind of run a risk of, when you're telling this type of story, of making the characters that you're poking fun at, since they're fitting those stereotypes, which are, egotistical, narcissistic, kind of annoying early 20-somethings, is that how do you get the audience sort of invested in caring about those characters? And so this movie has a bit of a similar vibe as the Shudder film Sissy from just a month or so ago, but I think they handle the characters pretty well. And there is obviously a lot of poking fun at the Gen Z stereotypes, which I think actually works pretty well. I found myself laughing out loud a handful of times, so I think the humor works pretty well. And for the most part, they play into your enjoyment of watching these people go through this insane experience. And I think they do a good job as well with the character of B, particularly because she is the one who's kind of different. She is not quite as maybe stereotypical as the rest of them, and so she's one that you can kind of latch onto a little bit and sort of gives you something to root for a little bit as well. And I also want to give a special shout out to the character of Alice, played by Rachel Sennott. She is the best character in this thing, I think. Her and B, at least for me. And she's the funniest, and she's the one who made me laugh the most, and I think her performance is really good. So she kind of stands out amongst the cast, and I think she just does a really solid job. And so I think overall, for kind of the satire, humor and all that stuff, I think it works pretty well here. So the first half an hour is a bit of kind of a slow build. You kind of establish sort of your plot and your characters, and kind of build on that a little bit. And then you get your first death about half an hour into it. And then things just kind of, slowly progress into craziness. And they do a pretty good job in kind of building tension just amongst the characters, right? Because they don't know who to trust and who are they going to be loyal to. And eventually, kind of the layers start getting peeled back, and you really get to what they really think about one another, and sort of the secrets and some of the backstory and the history and all that stuff, as that kind of gets, peeled back and everything. And it just kind of adds to the drama. It adds to the tension. And it works pretty well. And one of the things that this film doesn't do that I think is good is that it doesn't rely on flashbacks to fill in any of the backstory. It just tells its story. And so you can kind of fill in the gaps with just the conversations that they're having, and things like that. And so I think it does a good job in not falling into kind of a typical narrative trope here by giving you flashbacks to fill in details. And I think overall it creates a pretty interesting and compelling murder mystery where I was kind of playing along with the whodunit. I actually wrote down the list of the 7 suspects on my phone and was trying to piece together, who was the killer and all that stuff. And so I had a fun time with it. I'm a huge fan of these types of movies and these types of stories. I love the Agatha Christie novel, And Then There Were None, and this is more or less kind of a play on that type of story. So I love just the kind of the closed off setting with characters in one location, and they start dropping one by one. It's just an interesting story to me, and just a great sort of mystery. And so I found myself getting caught up in it. Another thing that they do that I think works really well is, throughout this entire movie, there are mentions of this character Adam, who we don't see, who isn't there. And I just think from sort of the storytelling and the mystery perspective, it was just a good choice, because that whole time I'm kind of wondering, okay, they have this character who could maybe show up at any minute and just kind of add a twist or a surprise to this thing, or is he just going to be sort of this red herring to just kind of throw you off the trail and get you sidetracked? And so I like how they use that character. I also think it's worth mentioning how the film is shot and lit, particularly as the majority of this takes place in the dark because the hurricane takes out all the power, and so there's no lights. And so each of the characters has to have a light source. So they got flashlights and their phones and these glow sticks. And I was reading just some of the trivia and how each of the actors were responsible for lighting the scenes. And so they had to have their flashlights and phones right at a certain position and a certain angle to light the scene correctly. So I think a shout out and some credit is deserved for the cinematography and the actors as well. And so the movie, because of that, kind of has a unique sort of visual look to it as well. I think the movie is paced well also. There's never really a dull moment. I never got bored with it. It moves along at a pretty quick pace. And I just kind of found myself getting wrapped up in the whole mystery of it and just the, craziness that continues to unfold. And I think they throw some good kind of curveballs and twists and turns along the way that sort of keep you guessing and keep you on edge. And as I said, there's just some good tension there amongst, obviously, the craziness of the situation, them trying to avoid a killer, but also, too, just with some of the dialogue exchanges between the characters, and it ultimately builds into a climax. And I won't get into explicit spoilers or anything like that, but I think the climax is pretty solid. You get down to some of your last few characters, and the gloves come off, and they really just start spewing stuff at each other, just hatred and what they really think, and it's just kind of entertaining to watch as you kind of put up this fake front, right? This fake friendship front. And then when the stuff hits the fan, all bets are off and they just start going at each other. And I just found it entertaining. And I think the performances are good as well. And ultimately, when you get kind of the ending and the final reveal, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a pretty gutsy call. I laughed. I thought it was funny. I think if you're going to kind of go that route and end it like the way that they ended it, I think this is kind of the movie to do that. I think it kind of plays into the whole satire that they're going for, and I think it kind of makes sense within the context of this film and what they're going for with playing into the Gen Z stereotypes and all that. And so I can understand why people might be disappointed with it or not like it, but I thought it was pretty good. It was a surprise to me. I didn't call it, so good job there. You got me. And so yeah, I had a pretty good time with this thing. I think overall for a grade, we'll go 7 out of 10 for Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. So if you haven't seen it, I would recommend give it a watch. I think it is worth your time. So those are my thoughts on Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Thanks for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button if you want more content like this, because that's what I do on The Haunted Beard. Horror and thriller movie content coming at you. So once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on The Haunted Beard.